Okay, I need you to stay with me here because what I'm about to tell you is not just a medical emergency. It's a political earthquake that's reshaping everything we thought we understood about power dynamics in Washington. At 3:47 this afternoon, Eastern Time, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, the man who has defined Republican strategy for 2 decades, collapsed on the Senate floor during a closed-door caucus meeting. He was mid-sentence speaking to fellow Republican senators about the Trump situation when witnesses say he suddenly stopped talking, grabbed the podium, and went down. But here's what's sending shockwaves through Capitol Hill right now. In the seconds before he lost consciousness, multiple senators who were in that room report that McConnell said something that no one expected to hear from him. According to 3 separate sources who were present, his exact words were, "We lost control of Trump years ago, and now it's destroying everything we built." Then he collapsed. If you're just finding this channel, hit that subscribe button immediately and turn on notifications because what unfolds over the next 72 hours will determine whether the Republican Party survives this moment intact or fractures beyond repair. This isn't about an 82-year-old man's health, though that matters enormously. This is about the most powerful Republican in Congress, a man who spent decades building institutional power and party discipline, publicly admitting in what he may have believed were his final words that the party lost control of the movement it created. Let me walk you through exactly what happened in that room because the details are critical and they're emerging fast. This was supposed to be a routine Tuesday caucus lunch. Republicans gather every week in the Mansfield Room, a secure space where senators can speak freely without cameras or reporters. The topic today was strategy for the upcoming budget vote and how to handle Trump's latest demands regarding the debt ceiling. According to senators who were present, McConnell had been speaking for about 8 minutes. His tone was described as unusually sharp, more frustrated than colleagues had heard from him in years. He was making the case that the caucus needed to draw a line, that they couldn't keep capitulating to every Trump demand without destroying their own legislative agenda. Senator Susan Collins, who was sitting 3 seats away, told staff afterward that McConnell seemed agitated but coherent. Then he said the line about losing control of Trump. Senator Mitt Romney, who was directly across the table, reports that McConnell paused after saying it, as if realizing he'd said something he shouldn't have out loud, and then his eyes rolled back. He reached for the podium, his knees buckled, and he went down hard. The room erupted into chaos. Senator John Thune, the minority whip, immediately called for medical help. Capitol physicians were on scene within 90 seconds. McConnell was unconscious. His pulse was weak but present. They began emergency treatment right there on the floor while other senators cleared the room. Within 4 minutes, a stretcher arrived. Within 7 minutes, he was being loaded into an ambulance. Within 12 minutes, he was at George Washington University Hospital. And within 15 minutes, the first report started leaking to the press. Not about his medical condition, but about what he'd said before he collapsed. Because in a city that runs on information and leverage, those words, "We lost control of Trump years ago," that's the kind of ammunition that changes entire political calculations. If you're understanding the stakes here, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. This story is moving faster than anything I've covered in years. Now, I need to give you context about Mitch McConnell because understanding who he is and what he represents is essential to understanding why this moment matters so much. McConnell has been in the Senate since 1985. He served as Republican leader since 2007. He's the longest-serving Senate party leader in American history. He's been the architect of Republican judicial strategy, the man who blocked Merrick Garland's Supreme Court nomination and then rushed through 3 Trump appointees. He's been the tactician behind every major legislative fight for 20 years. He's survived countless challenges to his leadership. He's outlasted presidents, speakers, party chairs. He's been called the Grim Reaper, the guy who kills Democratic legislation before it ever gets a vote. He's ruthlessly effective, deeply strategic, and famously disciplined. Mitch McConnell does not lose control. He doesn't show weakness. He doesn't admit mistakes. And he certainly doesn't publicly acknowledge that his party lost control of anything until today. Here's what makes this so explosive. McConnell's relationship with Trump has always been transactional and tense. He endorsed Trump in 2016 because he needed Trump's base to win Senate races. He worked with Trump when it served Republican goals judges especially. But he never liked Trump. He never trusted Trump. And after January 6th, McConnell gave a speech on the Senate floor saying Trump was practically and morally responsible for the attack on the Capitol. He voted to acquit in the impeachment trial on procedural grounds, but his speech afterward was devastating. He said history would judge Trump harshly. He said Trump's conduct was a disgraceful dereliction of duty. Those were not casual words. Those were McConnell trying to end Trump's political career. It didn't work. Trump survived. Trump thrived. And McConnell spent the next 3 years watching his own caucus drift further and further toward Trumpism, while his ability to control them weakened with every primary where a Trump-backed candidate won. Let me tell you what's been happening behind the scenes in the Republican caucus over the past 6 months, because it helps explain why McConnell finally said what he said. According to multiple Senate GOP sources, tensions have been building to a breaking point. Trump has been making increasingly extreme demands. He wants Republicans to shut down the government unless Democrats agree to defund the various investigations and prosecutions against him. He wants them to refuse to raise the debt ceiling unless Biden agrees to fire Jack Smith. He wants loyalty tests, purity pledges, unconditional support regardless of what he says or does, and a significant faction of Senate Republicans, the ones who owe their seats to Trump endorsements, they're on board. They're willing to crash the economy, default on debt, create constitutional crises, whatever Trump demands. But McConnell and what's left of the institutional Republicans, they know that path leads to electoral disaster in swing states and permanent minority status. They've been trying to hold the line, trying to maintain some semblance of traditional conservative governance, and they've been losing that fight day by day, vote by vote, caucus meeting by caucus meeting. Subscribe to this channel right now if you haven't already. Because what I'm about to explain is where this goes from a medical emergency to a genuine succession crisis that could reshape the Senate. McConnell is in the hospital. His condition is described as stable but serious. No official diagnosis has been released, but doctors familiar with the symptoms are speculating about everything from cardiac events to stroke to severe stress-related collapse. He's 82 years old. He's had multiple health scares in recent years, including that fall last year that hospitalized him for weeks. Even if he recovers fully, and that's uncertain, the fact that he collapsed while speaking about Trump, that he said what he said, that changes everything because now every Republican senator has to calculate what comes next. If McConnell can't continue as leader, who replaces him? And whoever replaces him, will they try to continue McConnell's strategy of managing Trump from within, or will they fully embrace Trumpism and abandon any pretense of independence? Let me walk you through the succession dynamics because they're complicated and they matter enormously. If McConnell steps down or is forced out, the obvious successor would be John Thune, the current minority whip. Thune is a McConnell protege, institutionalist, traditional conservative. But Thune has a problem. He's been critical of Trump at key moments. He voted to certify the 2020 election. He's called out Trump's false fraud claims. The MAGA wing of the caucus hates him. They'd fight his elevation to leader. The alternative is someone like Rick Scott of Florida or Ted Cruz of Texas, both of whom have positioned themselves as Trump loyalists, and both of whom have been openly campaigning for leadership positions. If Scott or Cruz becomes Republican leader, the party completes its transformation into a fully Trump-controlled operation. Every legislative decision becomes about what Trump wants. Every vote becomes a loyalty test. The few remaining institutionalists, your Romneys, your Collinses, your Murkowskis, they become completely irrelevant. Now, here's what's happening on Capitol Hill right this second. Because the maneuvering started before McConnell even reached the hospital. Senator Rick Scott released a statement wishing McConnell a full recovery, then immediately added that the caucus needs leadership that reflects where the party is today, not where it was 20 years ago. That's not subtle. That's Scott positioning himself as the Trump candidate for leader. Senator Ted Cruz was more careful, just expressing concern for McConnell's health, but Cruz has been making calls to other senators all afternoon. According to sources, Senator John Thune released a statement focused entirely on McConnell's health and recovery with no mention of succession. But Thune has also been locked in his office taking meetings with senior Republican senators. The race to replace McConnell has already begun, and McConnell isn't even confirmed as stepping down. That's how ruthless Senate politics can be, and that's how high the stakes are. Let me tell you what Democrats are saying because their response has been careful but telling. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer released a statement saying he's praying for his friend and colleague Mitch McConnell and hoping for a full recovery. But privately, according to sources, Democrats are gaming out what McConnell's exit means for their legislative agenda. McConnell has been a ruthless opponent, but he's also been predictable. He's been someone you could negotiate with when necessary. He's been institutionalist enough to care about keeping the government functioning. If he's replaced by someone like Rick Scott, who sees every vote as a chance to blow things up for Trump's benefit, governing becomes exponentially harder. Democrats might actually prefer McConnell stays, even though he's blocked them at every turn, because at least he's rational. At least he understands that defaulting on debt or shutting down the government long-term has consequences that hurt everyone, including Republicans. If this analysis is helping you understand what's actually happening, smash that like button and share this video. Leave a comment. Tell me who you think replaces McConnell if he steps down. Now, here's the angle that's getting less attention, but may matter most. What McConnell said before he collapsed: "We lost control of Trump years ago." That's not just a personal admission. That's a strategic assessment from the most astute political operator in the Republican Party. He's saying the party no longer controls its own nominee and frontrunner. He's saying Trump is driving the agenda and Republicans are just reacting. And if that's true, if that's McConnell's genuine assessment, what does it mean for the next 2 years? It means Trump, who's facing multiple criminal trials, who's making increasingly authoritarian statements, who's calling for vengeance against his enemies, he's in control of the Republican Party's direction. And there's no McConnell figure who can constrain him anymore. Let's talk about what this means for the 2024 election, because this isn't just about Senate leadership. This is about whether the Republican Party can win swing states with a fully Trumpified message. McConnell understood something that the MAGA wing refuses to accept. Trump lost in 2020. Republicans underperformed in 2022 in every race where Trump was the dominant issue. Swing voters in suburban districts, the people who decide close elections, they're exhausted by Trump. They want normalcy. They want competence. They want boring governance. McConnell's strategy has been to let Trump dominate the primary, secure the base, but then pivot to mainstream conservatism for the general election, keep Trump's voters while reassuring swing voters that responsible adults are still in charge. But that strategy requires Trump to be controllable, to be willing to moderate his message, to accept guidance from party leadership. And if McConnell's final assessment is that they lost control years ago, that strategy is dead, which means Republicans are going into 2024 betting everything on Trump's ability to win while being completely himself, completely unfiltered, completely unpredictable. Here's what we're learning about McConnell's condition from hospital sources. He's conscious now. He's speaking. Doctors are running tests to determine what caused the collapse. His family has been notified and is traveling to D.C. Senate GOP leadership is expected to visit the hospital this evening. But here's what sources close to McConnell are saying. Even if he physically recovers, even if doctors clear him to return to work, he's 82 years old and he just collapsed while discussing the stress of managing Trump. His colleagues were there. They saw it. They heard what he said. The caucus knows that the job of leading Republicans in the Trump era literally broke him. That knowledge changes the dynamic. Because if the stress of the job can do this to Mitch McConnell, one of the toughest political operators in modern history, what does that tell other senators about the price of standing up to Trump? Now, let me walk you through what happens procedurally if McConnell can't continue. The Republican caucus would meet to elect a new leader. Every Republican senator gets a vote. It's done by secret ballot. That secrecy matters because it allows senators to vote for who they actually want without facing primary challenges from Trump supporters. But there's a complication. Any leadership election right now becomes a referendum on Trump. Vote for Thune, you're voting for institutionalism and some level of Trump management. Vote for Scott or Cruz, you're voting for full MAGA, full loyalty, no guardrails. And senators know that however they vote, even in secret, eventually becomes known. Donors demand to know. Activists demand to know. Trump demands to know. So the secret ballot isn't as secret as it should be, which means the pressure to vote for a Trump loyalist is intense, even if senators privately believe that's a disaster. Let me give you 3 scenarios for how this plays out. Scenario 1, McConnell recovers, returns to leadership, But his health scare and his admission about losing control of Trump permanently weakens him. He becomes a lame duck leader. The MAGA faction ignores him. Thune or someone else effectively runs the caucus day to day. McConnell stays as figurehead, but his power is gone. Scenario 2, McConnell steps down. Thune becomes leader and tries to continue McConnell's strategy. But without McConnell's decades of accumulated power and relationships, Thune can't hold the caucus together. Republicans splinter into MAGA and institutionalist factions that fight openly. Scenario 3, McConnell steps down. A Trump loyalist like Scott becomes leader, and the Republican Senate caucus becomes fully Trumpified. Every decision runs through Mar-a-Lago. Every vote is a loyalty test. The few remaining moderates become irrelevant or retire. Here's what I think is most likely to happen based on conversations with people who understand Senate dynamics. McConnell will try to stay. He's fought for power his entire career. He's not going to give it up easily, but his effectiveness is shot. Everyone now knows that the Trump situation stresses him to the point of physical collapse. And his admission that they lost control, that's out there. It can't be taken back. So he stays as a weakened leader until after the 2024 election, hoping Trump loses and the fever breaks. If Trump wins, McConnell retires. If Trump loses, McConnell tries to rebuild the party and his image one more time. But either way, his era is ending. The admission we heard today, we lost control of Trump years ago. That's his epitaph. That's how he'll be remembered, as the man who built a powerful political machine and then watched helplessly as it got hijacked. Let me tell you about the immediate political fallout, because it's already happening. House Republicans are watching this and calculating, if Senate Republicans can't control Trump, why should they even try? Speaker Mike Johnson, who's already struggling to manage his own MAGA caucus, just got weaker. Every House Republican who was looking to McConnell as a model for how to manage Trump without being consumed by him, they just watched that model collapse, literally and figuratively. Meanwhile, Trump himself hasn't commented yet. No Truth Social posts about McConnell's health. No statement wishing recovery, nothing. And that silence speaks volumes. Trump knows what McConnell said. His people were texting with senators in that room within minutes. Trump knows McConnell called him uncontrollable. And Trump's lack of response, that's its own kind of power play. He's not even dignifying it with attention. He's demonstrating that McConnell, hospitalized and diminished, isn't worth responding to. Here's what Democrats should be paying attention to. If McConnell's assessment is correct, if Republicans genuinely lost control of Trump years ago, Democrats aren't running against a political party in 2024. They're running against a personality cult that happens to have ballot access and institutional infrastructure. That requires a completely different campaign strategy. You can't negotiate with a cult. You can't moderate their positions. You can't appeal to their institutional interests. You can only defeat them or lose to them. And everything McConnell built over 40 years in the Senate, all that institutional knowledge about how to negotiate, compromise, build coalitions, none of it matters anymore if the other side's only goal is whatever Trump wants on any given day. Let me give you 3 things to watch over the next 72 hours. 1, does McConnell resign, or does he fight to stay? If he resigns quickly, that's a signal he knows his time is done. If he fights, expect a brutal internal battle. 2, who starts publicly campaigning for leader? The first senator to openly say they're running reveals which faction thinks they have the votes. 3, what does Trump say when he finally comments? Does he attack McConnell for the lost control comment, or does he stay silent and let McConnell twist? Trump's response will tell us whether he sees McConnell as still dangerous or already defeated. We're witnessing one of those rare moments where you can see the exact instant when power shifts, when an era ends, when what seemed permanent proves fragile. Mitch McConnell built the modern Republican Party's strategic approach. He made it ruthlessly effective. And today, on the Senate floor, in what may have been his final political act, he admitted it's all slipping away. That admission changes everything. Subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications, share this video with anyone who needs to understand how quickly institutional power can collapse. Drop a comment with your prediction. Does McConnell return, or is his career over? And remember, in politics, sometimes the most important words are the ones spoken when someone thinks they might not get another chance. Mitch McConnell got his chance. He used it to tell the truth. We lost control of Trump years ago. Now we see what comes next. I'll see you in the next video.